The city was waking to the sound of rain whispering against courthouse stone. By tomorrow, this same building would host the biggest corruption trial the city had ever seen. But right now, something far more dangerous was happening. A woman climbed those slick marble steps, her shoes damp from the morning storm. Her name was Lena Carter. In one hand, she carried a worn leather briefcase filled with documents that could shatter careers. In the other, she carried a quiet kind of strength, the kind that doesn't shout but endures. She looked like any other professional starting her day. Jeans, sneakers, simple jacket. Nothing about her said judge. Nothing revealed the federal credentials hidden in her pocket. And that was by design. At the top of the steps, 3 officers waited in the shadows. Rain dripped from the edge of the roof as Sergeant Mark Russo stepped forward. His badge flashed under the gray light. His eyes narrowed. ID, he said flatly. Lena's voice was calm. Of course. She reached for her wallet, her movements measured, her tone respectful. I'm here for work, officer. But Russo wasn't listening. His eyes scanned her clothes, her skin, her composure, and what he saw didn't fit his version of belonging. He smirked. Work? Sure. Another welfare case trying to look important? Lena handed him her driver's license. The federal ID stayed hidden. I assure you I belong here, she said quietly. He studied the card like it offended him. His lip curled. Southside address, he muttered. Figures. The briefcase slipped from her hand. Papers scattered across wet stone. Seals gleaming gold beneath the sun breaking through clouds. Before she could kneel to gather them, Russo's hand cracked across her face. The sound echoed off marble. It wasn't just a slap, it was a statement. One meant to humiliate. Lena didn't cry. Didn't shout. Didn't run. She bent down, slowly, gracefully, and began collecting her papers one by one. Every movement deliberate. Every document turned face down, hiding the federal seals. Rain streaked her cheek where the slap had landed, but her eyes stayed sharp, calculating. A second officer arrived, Officer Maya Torres, her radio hissing with static. She froze when she saw the mark on Lena's face. Sergeant, what's going on? Routine stop, Russo replied, brushing off his anger. Suspicious individual, but nothing felt routine. Not to Maya. Not to the janitor leaning on his mop inside the doorway. Because that janitor was no janitor. His name was Agent Daniel Cole, U.S. Marshal undercover, and Lena Carter wasn't a lost civilian. As Russo turned away, Lena's fingers found her phone. One tap, one number, her voice barely above a whisper. It's happening. Proceed as planned. Then silence. Bystanders stood frozen, phones raised, filming but not intervening. Their fear turned them into witnesses instead of helpers. Every second, cameras captured what would soon ignite an entire city. Lena gathered the last paper, tucked it neatly into her case, and stood tall. Officer Torres hesitated. Ma'am, maybe you should move along. Lena smiled faintly. I wouldn't want to be late. She walked toward the courthouse doors, not away. And the guards at the side entrance recognized her instantly. They stepped aside without a word. Russo frowned. His instincts screamed that something was off. He turned to Maya. Follow her. But before she could respond, Lena had disappeared inside. Inside the courthouse. The elevator doors opened with a quiet chime. Lena stepped in, pressed the button marked Judicial Chambers, and looked at her reflection in the polished steel. Her cheek was still red, her expression unreadable. As the elevator rose, she whispered to herself, one more day. Outside, Russo's radio crackled. Unit 7 returned to station. Priority 1, he frowned. What priority? But no one answered. Inside the elevator, Lena checked her watch. Right on schedule. Tomorrow, justice would be on trial. But today, injustice had already made its first mistake. Rain streaked down the courthouse windows as Lena Carter stepped out of the elevator. Her heels clicked across the marble floor, echoing through the empty corridor. Every sound seemed amplified. The hum of lights, the distant murmur of guards, the pulse of a secret too large to contain. Inside her office, documents covered the desk like a battlefield of truth. Financial ledgers, signed confessions, hidden transfers, 18 months of work leading to one single trial. The Romero case. A web of corruption that had reached from City Hall to the police department itself. And tomorrow it would all come crashing down. She set her briefcase on the desk, opened it, and pulled out a sealed folder marked Federal Confidential. Her reflection in the glass window looked like two different people. The judge the world knew, and the operative the world didn't. Beneath the surface of authority lived a strategist, an undercover federal agent cloaked in black robes of justice. Across town in an unmarked surveillance van, Agent Sarah Blake watched multiple screens glow in shades of green and gray. Courthouse cameras, traffic feeds, police radios. Each one displayed a thread of the same operation. "Phoenix is in position," Sarah said into her headset. Her team of analysts nodded silently. They knew the stakes. 18 months of infiltration, of Lena living among the wolves. One mistake could burn everything. Back in the police cruiser, Sergeant Russo sat behind the wheel, fists gripping the steering wheel hard enough to whiten his knuckles. His partner, Lieutenant Tom Raines, slid into the passenger seat, expensive suit smelling faintly of cologne and deceit. "What's going on, Mark?" Raines asked, flipping through his notes. Russo didn't answer right away. He just stared at the courthouse through the windshield. "That woman," he muttered. "Something about her isn't right." Raines laughed softly. "You mean the one you just assaulted on camera?" "Don't start," Russo snapped. "The guards let her through like they knew her. Who does that for a random civilian?" "Then find out who she is," Raines said flatly. "We can't afford surprises right now. Not before tomorrow." Officer Maya Torres sat silently in the back seat. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. The photo attached froze her blood. Her little girl walking to school, backpack, ponytail, smile. The message beneath it was simple: stay quiet, or else. She dropped the phone. It hit the floor with a sound that made Russo turn. "Problem?" he asked coldly. "No, sir," she whispered. "No problem at all." Across town, Agent Blake leaned closer to her screen. Multiple signals were now active: police chatter, encrypted calls, private channels. The operation was heating up faster than planned. "Targets took the bait," she said. "Now we wait." In her chambers, Lena Carter scrolled through digital evidence: bank transfers linking dirty money to police pension accounts, audio recordings of secret meetings, witness statements from terrified informants. Every piece had been gathered with precision. Every risk calculated. Her phone rang. "Judge Carter," said her clerk Alex. "There's been a report of a security breach. They're recommending we delay tomorrow's trial." Lena's voice was calm but decisive. "No delays, Alex. Justice doesn't wait for comfort." She hung up and looked out at the storm rolling across the skyline. Thunder growled above the city, low and angry. It felt like a warning. Meanwhile, in a smoky back office of the police union, Raines made another call. "Lieutenant Rodriguez owes me favors," he said into the receiver. "Internal Affairs has been sniffing around. If that woman's connected to them, we're finished." He hung up, pacing. Everything they'd built, the bribes, the offshore accounts, the deals with Romero's syndicate, it all teetered on the edge of exposure. In her unmarked van, Agent Blake adjusted her earpiece. "Phoenix," she said softly. "We're live." Lena picked up her phone again. "I'm ready," she replied. That single line set everything into motion. Night fell hard over the city. Streetlights flickered like nervous witnesses. In the police parking lot, Russo sat alone in his car, watching news feeds about the upcoming trial. His reflection looked older, angrier. He didn't know it yet, but his downfall had already begun. Inside her office, Lena closed her laptop, locked the case, and exhaled slowly. Tomorrow she would expose the men who had just humiliated her. And the entire country would know the truth, she whispered to herself. They think I'm just a woman with a briefcase. Wait until they find out what's inside. Outside, thunder rolled again. The storm was only beginning. Lightning cut across the skyline as midnight bled into morning. The courthouse stood like a fortress against the storm, its marble walls hiding more than law inside. Truth and treachery waited to collide. In a narrow street behind the building, Agent Sarah Blake's surveillance van glowed in the dark. Multiple monitors displayed feeds from every corner of the courthouse. One camera showed Lena Carter pacing in her office, her posture steady but her eyes distant. Another showed police units moving in erratic patterns as if hunting ghosts. Team 2, eyes on all entrances, Sarah ordered. Local units are acting off script. They're getting nervous. Her partner, Agent Rivera, typed furiously. I'm picking up cross-chatter on their encrypted line. Someone's issuing orders to pull court security away from the east side. Perfect, Sarah said quietly. That's where they'll try to make their move. Inside her office, Lena reviewed the final layers of evidence. Bank statements, shell companies, secret accounts, all leading back to the same people who had arrested her hours ago. The irony was almost poetic. She paused, staring at the framed photograph on her desk. Her father, a civil rights lawyer, long gone but never forgotten. You taught me that justice has a price, she murmured. I'm ready to pay it, her computer chimed. An encrypted message flashed, Protocol 9 initiated. Stay inside. Federal backup mobilizing. She typed one response, proceed. No delays. Across town, Lieutenant Tom Raines stormed into a dimly lit conference room inside the police union headquarters. The air was thick with smoke and panic. Internal affairs is compromised, he hissed. And that woman, Carter, she's not who she says she is. At the far end of the table, Michael Grant, the union's top legal advisor, leaned back in his chair, gold watch glinting. Then who is she? Raines hesitated.
Federal.
She's been feeding evidence to the Justice Department for over a year. Grant froze, his composure slipping for the first time. You're telling me we assaulted a federal judge? Worse, Raines said. We assaulted the one person who can destroy us all. The room fell silent. Then phones started ringing, one after another, like alarms. Grant answered first, his voice tight. Do whatever it takes, find her. End this before morning. Officer Maya Torres sat in her cruiser outside, hands trembling on the steering wheel. The threat message still burned in her mind, her daughter's face, her smile. She tried calling her ex-husband, no answer. Then another message appeared. We see you. Obey or we'll finish what we started. Her breath came in shallow bursts. She knew she had two choices. Silence or betrayal of the corrupt men who now owned her fear. At 2:30 a.m., the courthouse went dark for exactly 7 seconds. When the lights came back, Lena's computer showed 3 failed login attempts. She didn't panic. She smiled. Too late, she whispered. Everything's already backed up. Outside, Russo and Raines led a group of armed officers up the courthouse steps, the same steps where Lena had been struck that morning. Russo's jaw was clenched, his anger simmering under his uniform. We go in, arrest her quietly, confiscate the files. No witnesses. Raines nodded, but his voice trembled. Just remember, if she's who you say she is, this ends all of us. Inside, the cleaning staff cleared out as quietly as ghosts. Only one man remained, Agent Daniel Cole, still in his janitor uniform, moving from corridor to corridor, eyes sharp, earpiece buzzing. Target in motion, he whispered. Multiple units approaching north entrance. Prepare containment, Sarah's voice came through his earpiece. Copy that. Do not engage until visual confirmation. Lena opened her chamber door. Her footsteps echoed as she walked toward the elevator. When the doors opened, she saw her reflection again. The cheek that had been slapped still faintly bruised, but her gaze fierce, alive. This is it, she said under her breath. The storm meets the truth. Downstairs, Russo's team entered the lobby. The sound of boots against tile filled the silence. Federal Judge Lena Carter, Russo barked. You're under arrest for obstruction and interference with a police investigation. His voice reverberated off marble and glass. From behind a column, Daniel Cole watched, jaw tight. He whispered into his mic. They've breached the main floor. She's compromised. Hold position, Sarah ordered. Backup's 2 minutes out. Lena turned slowly, her expression unreadable. On what grounds? She asked. Russo held up a paper. Warrant signed this morning. She smiled faintly. Signed by whom? He hesitated. Lieutenant Grant. A man under investigation for bribery and racketeering? She said softly. That's a bold choice for a legal witness. Her calm rattled him. Cuff her, he growled. Maya Torres stepped forward, cuffs in hand. Her eyes darted from Lena's face to Russo's. Her conscience screamed against her training. She whispered, I'm sorry. Lena nodded. Don't be. The truth always costs something. The cuffs clicked. Cold metal against warm skin? Russo shoved her forward, anger overriding reason. The cameras outside captured everything. Every step, every insult, every flash of injustice. Agent Cole whispered into his mic again. They've got her. Moving her to transport. Sarah's tone sharpened. We have to let them. The bigger exposure happens inside. As Lena was led through the courthouse lobby, her head held high. Rain poured harder outside. Phones lifted again, recording every second. Her voice rose clearly above the storm. The Fourth Amendment protects against unlawful seizure. The Fifth guarantees due process. The 14th ensures equality before the law. Russo sneered. Save your speeches, lady. Lena met his gaze. They're not speeches. They're the rules you broke. She was forced into the car. The door slammed shut. The engine roared. Outside, a crowd gathered as the word spread. A federal judge arrested by her own police department. Social media erupted. Videos uploaded in seconds. Hashtags formed like wildfire. And from her van, Agent Blake whispered, "It's begun. Phase 2. As the convoy drove into the storm, Lena stared straight ahead, her voice low, unshaken. Justice doesn't die in darkness, she said. It just waits for light. The rain kept falling, but something had already shifted. The truth had left the courthouse, and now it was spreading through the entire city. By dawn, the city was no longer asleep. It was awake, restless, and burning with questions. Videos of the arrest flooded every screen. A federal judge handcuffed by her own police force. Commentators argued on morning news channels. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse before the sun even rose. In the van, Agent Sarah Blake hadn't slept. Her eyes were fixed on a live feed from the police station. Lena Carter sat in a holding cell, calm and composed, hands folded neatly in her lap. The fluorescent light above her flickered every few seconds, but she didn't flinch. She was waiting. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from the Department of Justice. Proceed with extraction only after public confirmation. Maximum visibility, Sarah sighed. They're turning this into strategy. Rivera looked up. You mean they're letting her sit in there on purpose? Yes, she said. Because when she walks out, it has to mean something. Inside the station, Sergeant Russo stood at his desk, pretending to work. His hands trembled as he flipped through arrest reports. Every headline flashing on his phone used the same words, Judge Carter. Unlawful arrest. Possible corruption. His stomach turned. He tried to tell himself it would all blow over. It wouldn't. Lieutenant Raines stormed in. You've made us a national spectacle, Mark. She walked right into the courthouse like she owned it. Russo snapped. How was I supposed to know she's federal? You were supposed to think before you hit her, Raines hissed. Their argument died when a voice came from the hallway. Gentlemen, I wouldn't raise your voices. These walls have ears. It was Michael Grant. His calm felt manufactured, his smile brittle. We'll get through this, he said. We always do. Russo stared at him. And what if we don't? Grant leaned closer, voice low. Then you better pray she doesn't start talking. In her cell, Lena could hear every sound, the ringing phones, the slam of paperwork, the whispers traveling through the building. Her cheek still burned faintly from the slap, but her thoughts were sharper than ever. She replayed each moment in her head like a courtroom testimony. His tone, the warrant, the cameras. Every detail would matter later. The cell door opened. Officer Maya Torres stepped inside, face pale. They told me not to talk to you, she whispered. Then you shouldn't be here, Lena said softly. I can't keep quiet anymore. They've threatened my daughter. If I speak, she's next. Lena looked at her gently. The people who use fear as a weapon are the ones who already lost. Maya's eyes filled. What do I do? Tell the truth, Lena said. Not for me. For her. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Maya backed away, leaving as quietly as she came. In another room, Raines was on the phone with a nervous informant. Everything's falling apart, the man said. Federal oversight's coming. You need to burn whatever's left. Raines swallowed hard. And if we can't? Then you're next. At that exact moment, Agent Sarah Blake received an encrypted message from federal headquarters. Emergency hearing scheduled. DOJ intervention authorized. Prepare full exposure. She smiled grimly. Showtime. An hour later, news crews surrounded the station. Reporters shouted over each other, cameras flashing. Words like constitutional crisis and civil rights violation filled the air. Detective Eli Morris, newly transferred from Internal Affairs, arrived at the chaos. He showed his badge and pushed his way through the press. Inside, he found Russo pacing the bullpen, face ashen. You really managed to make history, Morris said quietly. Who are you? Someone who still believes in the law, Morris replied. And right now, that woman in your cell represents every reason people stop trusting you. Before Russo could respond, The chief's voice boomed across the room. Federal marshals are on their way. Everyone stay where you are. The room froze. No one moved. Lena heard the commotion from her cell. She stood, brushed invisible dust from her clothes, and waited. The door opened. 2 federal agents entered, one of them Sarah Blake. Judge Carter, she said formally. You're free to go. Federal jurisdiction supersedes local authority. Lena stepped forward slowly. Russo appeared in the hallway as she emerged. His jaw tightened, shame and defiance fighting in his eyes. She stopped in front of him. You'll have your day in court, she said quietly. Just like everyone else, he didn't answer. He didn't need to. Outside, cameras flashed as the doors opened. The sight of Lena Carter walking out, chin high, hands free, sent the crowd into applause that rolled like thunder. She paused on the steps, facing the sea of microphones. Justice, she said, her voice clear and steady, belongs to no one man. It is not a favor to be given, nor a privilege to be taken. It is the law, and the law does not bend to corruption. The crowd erupted. Reporters shouted questions, but Lena simply continued walking toward the courthouse across the street. Behind her, officers watched in silence. Some lowered their heads. Others turned away. That same afternoon, Congress announced an emergency oversight hearing. The Justice Department launched a full-scale investigation into the city's police union. For the first time in years, truth was no longer whispered in backrooms. It was shouted in the streets. And somewhere inside that chaos, Maya Torres made her call. Agent Blake? Yes, Sarah answered. I'm ready to testify. For the first time in days, Sarah smiled. Then it's over for them, but Lena knew better. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Because once corruption loses its silence, it fights louder. She looked back at the courthouse, knowing the trial ahead would tear open everything. The storm had passed, but thunder was still on the horizon. The courtroom was full long before the session began. Reporters packed every bench, their cameras waiting to capture history. Outside, a crowd stretched across the courthouse steps, people chanting, holding signs that demanded justice. Federal marshals lined the walls, expressionless but alert. When the doors opened and Judge Lena Carter entered, the noise outside dimmed as if the world had taken a breath. She moved to the bench with measured grace, black robes flowing, no hesitation in her stride. The same steps where she had been slapped now led her back to power. Court is in session, she said, her voice even and steady. On the defendant's side sat Sergeant Mark Russo, Lieutenant Tom Raines, and Michael Grant. Each looked smaller than the day before, stripped of arrogance, surrounded by lawyers who already knew there was nothing left to defend. The federal prosecutor, Daniel Price, stood. Your Honor, the United States presents evidence of organized corruption, financial misconduct, and obstruction of justice within the city's law enforcement division. Lena nodded. Proceed. The first piece of evidence appeared on the screen. Wire transfers between police pension funds and offshore accounts. Millions of dollars filtered through shell corporations that led directly to the men seated before her. Murmurs filled the room, Price continued. These transactions, hidden under the guise of community initiatives, were authorized by the defendants and used to launder bribes from the Romero syndicate. We also present surveillance footage confirming the assault and unlawful arrest of a sitting federal judge. The video played. Gasps spread through the audience. The slap echoed again through the courtroom, but this time it didn't hurt. This time it condemned. Russo looked down, his jaw clenched. Sweat rolled down his temple. Then came the recordings. Voices everyone recognized. Raines discussing payoffs, Grant instructing others to destroy files. Each voice clear as day, stripped away denial. Finally, a new voice filled the speakers, Officer Maya Torres. I witnessed systemic abuse of power, she said in the recording. We targeted citizens for their color, their income, their silence. I feared for my daughter's safety. I stayed quiet, but not anymore. Maya sat in the witness box now, tears in her eyes, hands trembling but steady enough to sign her name to the truth. I'm not here to save myself, she said. I'm here because I want my daughter to grow up in a city where justice doesn't wear a badge of corruption. The crowd rose to its feet. Even seasoned journalists felt tears sting their eyes. Lena waited for silence before speaking. Thank you, Officer Torres. You may step down. Next came Detective Eli Morris from Internal Affairs. His testimony outlined years of cover-ups, falsified reports, and the quiet removal of honest officers. It was a culture of protection for the corrupt, he said. Anyone who tried to speak up lost their job or worse. Lena leaned forward slightly. And why didn't you speak up sooner, detective? He hesitated. Because the system wasn't ready to listen. Her eyes softened. Then let's make sure it listens now. The prosecutor called the final witness and the one no one expected. Romero himself. Once a powerful businessman with half the city in his pocket, now he sat in an orange jumpsuit, wrists chained. His empire was gone, his influence reduced to nothing. Mr. Romero, Price said, please tell the court in your own words how this operation functioned. Romero's voice cracked as he began. I bought them. Every one of them. They wanted money, promotions, protection. It was easy. But he nodded toward Lena. She didn't take my offer. She took everything else instead. My money, my friends, my freedom. He looked at Russo, Raines, and Grant. They chose greed. I chose survival. Now we all lose. Silence filled the room like a weight. When the testimonies ended, Lena closed the file before her. She looked at the men who had mocked her, threatened her, and chained her hands. Sergeant Russo, Lieutenant Raines, Mr. Grant, she began. You were sworn to protect the people. Instead, you protected yourselves. You used the law as a weapon. You turned justice into profit, her tone hardened. The Constitution was not written for convenience. It was written for truth. And truth, no matter how long it hides, always finds light. She lifted her gavel. The court finds you guilty on all counts. Racketeering, corruption, and assault on a federal officer. The gavel struck once. The sound was final, absolute. Russo's head fell forward. Raines pressed his hands against his face. Grant whispered something that no one could hear. Maybe a prayer, maybe regret. The room erupted in applause. Outside, the crowd cheered as news alerts flashed across the country. Historic conviction in federal corruption case. Lena stayed seated as the noise swelled. She didn't smile. Justice was never triumph. It was balance restored. Hours later, when the courtroom had emptied, she stood alone by the bench. The same marble walls that once watched her humiliation now held the echo of redemption. Agent Sarah Blake entered quietly. It's over, she said. Lena turned. No, Sarah, it's only beginning. Now comes rebuilding. Weeks passed. The city changed. Corrupt officials resigned or faced charges. Honest officers promoted. New policies written. For the first time in years, people believed in their police again. Officer Maya Torres became Detective Torres, leading an internal reform team. Detective Morris joined her, training young recruits, and Lena Carter was nominated to the Supreme Court. Months later, under the dome of the Capitol, she raised her hand and took the oath. I swear to administer justice without respect to persons and to equal right to the poor and to the rich. Her voice did not tremble. When it was done, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Senators, journalists, citizens, all clapping for the woman who had turned assault into awakening. Years later, law students would visit the courthouse steps where it began. A bronze plaque gleamed beneath the morning sun. It read, Here, Judge Lena Carter showed that courage is the heartbeat of justice. Truth may stumble, but it never falls. And those who stood before it, young lawyers, officers, ordinary citizens, would whisper the same words she once did to herself on that stormy morning. Justice doesn't die in darkness. It just waits for light. Years later, the city had changed, but not as much as the people who had lived through the storm. The courthouse, once a symbol of fear and corruption, now stood as a monument to rebirth. It wasn't perfect. Justice never was. But the foundation had shifted. People walked those marble steps with a little more faith in what waited behind the doors. Inside, a new generation of judges and attorneys filled the halls, many of them inspired by one name, Lena Carter. Her portrait hung in the main corridor now, framed in light, eyes steady and alive. Beneath it, the same words etched in brass, Truth may stumble, but it never falls. Lena stood before that portrait one quiet morning, years after her Supreme Court appointment. The building was empty, sunlight pouring through stained glass, washing the floor in color. She traced a finger along the brass plaque, her mind drifting back to the slap, the fear, the choice she made to stand. Agent Sarah Blake entered from behind her, older too, carrying a file marked Federal Closure, Operation Phoenix. You still come here, Sarah said softly. Every anniversary, Lena replied. Reminds me that courage isn't a single act. It's a decision you keep making. Sarah smiled faintly. We finally closed the last case. All of them. Every file connected to Romero's network. It's over. Lena shook her head slowly. It's never over. Corruption doesn't disappear, it waits. We just have to be louder than it is. Outside, rain began to fall, the same kind of rain that had soaked those steps the day her story began. Across the street, school buses rolled by. Among the children, a teenage girl with a curly ponytail stopped, staring up at the courthouse. It was Maya Torres's daughter, older now, eyes full of wonder. She pointed to the portrait inside. That's her, right? The judge who stood up to everyone? Her mother, now Detective Torres, smiled. That's her. And she didn't just stand up. She changed everything. Inside, Lena turned from the portrait as footsteps echoed behind her. Chief Justice Harold Daniels approached, folder in hand. The city's naming a new federal complex, he said. They want you to cut the ribbon. Lena chuckled. Buildings don't interest me, Harold. People do. Then come meet them, he said. They're the ones you inspired. Outside, the crowd waited. Students, activists, officers, lawyers. The same courthouse steps were now lined with banners reading integrity, justice, courage. When Lena appeared, the applause rolled like thunder again, just as it had the day she was released. But this time it wasn't outrage driving them. It was hope. She took the microphone, her robe replaced by a simple black suit. Once I walked these steps in chains. Today I walk them free, not because justice is flawless, but because we refuse to stop demanding it. The crowd quieted. She looked over their faces, the old, the young, the ones who had doubted, the ones who had believed. Justice doesn't belong to judges, she said. It belongs to you. Every time you tell the truth. Every time you choose courage over silence. You honor the law better than any courtroom can. Detective Torres stood near the front, hands clasped tight, tears running silently. Her daughter held a small notebook, writing every word down. Lena lifted her gaze toward the sky. The rain had stopped. Light broke through the clouds, spilling gold over the courthouse dome. She spoke her last words like a vow. Justice isn't a destination. It's a pulse. As long as it beats, this country lives. The crowd erupted again, not with noise, but with purpose. People hugging, clapping, raising their signs. The courthouse steps gleamed under the sun, no longer stained with fear, but shining with faith renewed. Lena stepped back, the sound of applause fading into a hum. She smiled at Sarah. You know, she said, that day they thought they silenced me. They only gave me a louder voice. Sarah nodded, and the world listened. The two women walked down the marble steps together, side by side, disappearing into the sea of people that now carried the torch forward. The courthouse doors closed behind them, but the story didn't end there. It lived on in the classrooms, in the hearts of young lawyers, in the lessons whispered to every new officer who took an oath. Because some stories don't fade, they echo. And this one, born in rain, raised in courage, and sealed in truth, would echo forever.